of the Sun. Thank you both for coming in on a Sunday morning, early doors as well. There's lots to get through, everything from pints in the street through to seagulls and water pistols, but we'll start with the important politics, both home and abroad. Let's start, shall we, with the front page and Donald Trump.
Yeah, so this is a tricky day for Keir Starmer ahead. He's going to be meeting with Trump and he's expected to convince him to reopen negotiations around Israel-Gaza. Of course, Trump withdrew their negotiating teams from Qatar a couple of weeks ago and in the last few days, and he's also been pretty clear on where he stands, which is that Hamas needs to be defeated. But this comes with a backdrop of horrific images that are emerging from Gaza. And obviously Starmer is facing this backbench rebellion. There's around 220 MPs, cross-party, these MPs who have written to the Prime Minister to urge him to take action on Palestine and recognise it as a state. I highly doubt within this visit Trump will recognise Palestine as a state. And, you know, Starmer's opinion on this, I can't really imagine is at the top of Trump's agenda. So this will probably be a conversation that will be, in quite light terms only.
The cynic in me says, considering that the president's in town, there's going to be no major announcements from the government until at least he heads back home. Yeah,
that's right. I think Keir Starmer was at sort of the middle of last week. It was going to be a discussion about refining this trade deal between the United Kingdom and the United States. But obviously in the last few days, this has really risen to the top of the agenda. But I think one thing for Sir Keir, he doesn't want to just offer this. I think what he wants to do is treat everything in the round, and there has to be part of a wider ceasefire negotiations. He won't just go, hell for leather and say that, we recognise the Palestinian state. So that is where he's going to come from. It's going to be a very slowly but surely way of getting to that. And his MPs, I think, have to be patient on that stance.
Worth remembering that, France obviously made that recognition, but, up until that point, France, the UK are outliers. In many respects, 147 of the 193 UN member states have recognised a Palestinian state. The United States obviously hasn't either. Internationally, kind of in a small group that hasn't done so. And that's a point that politicians on the backbenches are keen to make, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And even in 2014 in the UK, there was a symbolic vote over recognising the state of Palestine, Palestine as a state. And actually many of the members of the now cabinet who perhaps have not been as strong on Palestine as they were expected to did vote during that parliamentary session to recognise Palestine. But, I was speaking to a number of MPs yesterday, Labour backbench MPs, and one of them actually told me they were frightened by the level of correspondence they were receiving from their constituents. There's a real strength of feeling, I would say, in the UK at the moment to recognise Palestine. And it almost feels that Starmer is slightly out of kilter with that public feeling.
We will follow that closely. There'll be plenty more to come. And also the Prime Minister saying that they will play a role in those potential aid drops as well that have been greenlit by the Israelis. Meanwhile, in number 11, drinking in the streets is the way to save the high street.
Yeah, no, this is... Normally, when it comes to budgets, we don't hear hide nor hair from ministers. They say, we're not going to comment on any sort of any tax measures ahead of time. But Jonathan Reynolds, the Business Secretary, today, very keen to tell everyone that pubs, clubs and shops are all set for tax cuts, and it will be easier for pubs actually to serve on the streets. We'll be back to that sort of COVID al fresco dining that people loved during that time. And I think that one of the reasons that they've come to this decision is because there's a big revamp of business rates, but also the hospitality industry has just been hit so badly from national insurance hikes. They've really felt the rise in national minimum wage as well. So I just feel like they needed to offer something to this sort of retail, leisure, hospitality industry that has suffered quite a lot in basically the last 3 or 4 years, really.
Interesting that the tax cuts are being heralded early, but we're not hearing anything about the tax rises, are we? Well,
we have been told by Jonathan Reynolds that there will be no wealth tax. I think he laughed it off, actually, a couple of days ago, which, again, is rather unusual ahead of a budget, because presumably nothing has actually been decided as of yet. So, I mean, one thing I suppose has been, which is that the wealthy are not going to pay for it. But someone's got to. And especially here where we're talking about, you know, well, we're going to make it easier for pubs, we're going to make it easier for you to drink on the street. OK, but do the British public have cash in their back pockets to spend their money at the pubs right now? You know, you've had wage stagnation for over 15 years and the economy hasn't got particularly better in the last year or so. So this sort of feels like a concentric circle. I don't really know what problem they're solving because the initial problems haven't been.
Yeah, and to that point on this network yesterday, talking about the number of parents who can't afford school trips for their children. Well, if you can't afford that, you're probably not going to go and afford to go and drink with your mates on a Friday night, are you? And to your point, you've got to solve some of the deeper endemic issues before you can kind of get to this point.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things that Rachel Reeves will be talking about, and she's trying to improve in the coming months, is productivity in this country. Britain, the United Kingdom, has just not kept pace with other G7 countries. And until you kind of address that issue, it's going to be really difficult to try and find growth.
The French looking to potentially scrap 2 public holidays, I think, to try and kind of claw back some of the deficit in the country. But productivity in France, 19% higher than this country, despite... Other endemic issues is the situation regarding migrants on the front page of The Telegraph, and kind of a warning, I think, in the first sentence, fears of summer riots.
Well, so this is sort of off the back of there are a number of there are a number of hotels that are housing asylum seekers up and down the country, and there has been a number of clashes outside of those. One of them is in Epping, where there's actually a very organic situation. There is a man who is alleged to have groped a 14-year-old girl in the town centre, and then so you have this group of protesters who are sitting outside the hotel. But you also have this second group, which are more of the far right group of protesters. So these are people from Patriotic Alternative or Homeland who are being bussed in from all across the country. And what the government is worried about now is that this situation could become a pattern that repeats itself up and down the country over the summer as tensions rise. The Telegraph here is talking about this police unit that's going to monitor social media outrage over these asylum seekers. This kind of hyperbolized this story because really what this is about is that police will be inside Telegram chats, working out where these hotspots are, where they should be sending police officers. The Telegraph have sort of made it more of a culture war free speech issue, which I don't quite think it is.
Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think it's very interesting quotes here from the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, and Nigel Farage. Chris Philp talks about the two-tier system of they're trying to monitor free speech, but actually shouldn't they be really looking at getting police on the streets and more money into frontline policing? And actually Nigel Farage says it's trying to control free speech from the outset. So I think as much it's maybe it should be an early warning system for the police to actually monitor things. The Conservatives and Reform UK very keen to seize on these comments as a free speech and, as you say, into a culture war.
You know, at the end of the day, there's nothing new about police trying to infiltrate and be part of groups and listen to try and understand and get intelligence to then figure out how they're going to police events. We've covered those stories for years and years and years. Just very quickly, junior doctor strikes, we're day 3 of 5 currently, aren't we? Or resident doctor strikes, and warnings.
Yeah, no, it looks like that health leaders are warning that this could actually snowball, and you could have junior doctors, you could have mid-grade doctors and consultants all basically coming together and striking on one particular day, which will make it really, really difficult to get those operations, those treatments done, and getting those waiting lists and treatment times down. So it's going to be it could be a very, very long autumn and winter for ministers to try and solve that.
Very long winter to try and solve that. Very long winter also to try and also bring about the changes, the reforms they're planning to do. It's very hard to do that if you've not got people in role kind of doing those jobs, and also to get that backlog of cases. Ryan and Ava, appreciate your time. Thank you. We're going to have plenty more of the day's top stories after a short break. There is, of course, plenty more insight analysis and coverage of all of our news on the Sky News website and the Sky News app. Get it on your smartphone or tablet.
I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. The war